Hello, Elijah and classmates. My name's Dr. Brad. I'm a paleontologist here at the University of West Georgia. And I have some questions here to answer regarding crinoids. And luckily, crinoids are one of my favorite organisms in the whole world, so I'm thrilled to be able to answer the questions and talk about them for a few minutes. First thing, what is a crinoid? This is like the first question we should ask about anything, right? Like, okay, I want to know more about this group of organisms. What are they? So crinoids are also known as feather stars and sea lilies. So even though they have that kind of like flowery name, they are animals. So they're animals like we are animals, and they're related to starfish. They're related to sea urchins. So crinoids are essentially these organisms. They're called invertebrates, meaning they don't have a backbone like we do. But that being said, they have lots of similarities with us. So they have skeletons made out of lots of little pieces that are inside their body like we do. So it's unlike an insect or a bug where there's skeletons on the outside. So they're actually pretty similar, and we can see what they look like here. So here I have a crinoid. Put that right up to the screen here. This is a crinoid. This is a modern crinoid that was living on the ocean floor. So this is an animal that lives. It has a long stalk, in some cases, attaching it to the seafloor. It has a body holding all of its guts inside. Then it has these long branching arms, which it's going to use to collect food from the water itself. Right? So that's what a crinoid is. They can move kind of slowly, and they're going to reposition themselves into the seawater and sit there and collect food, just kind of similar like a coral in the ocean or a clam in the ocean pulling food out of the seawater itself. So what do they eat? So if you go to the beach or if you go to the lake and you look at the water, it looks largely kind of clear and empty of stuff, but there's lots of stuff actually there. So in the ocean, what we want to think about is if you grab some ocean water, there's lots of organisms that are really microscopic, called plankton. And those plankton are all over the ocean. They're hugely abundant, right? Think about whales eating plankton and the huge amount of material that they have to eat. Crinoids are eating that same food source. So even though they're sitting like they're in clear water, just there collecting food, the food is really tiny. It'd be like you eating like tiny, minuscule little grains of rice and getting your food that way. They're eating really small stuff. And they collect it in their arms. I'm miming, I can show you here. They collect it in their arms, then they pass it down to the mouth right at the base here. So they're just collecting food particles. In essence, if you look at the arms themselves, there's a little groove in there. And they can only eat food particles that'll fit in that groove, just like you can only eat food particles that fit in your mouth. All right, so where do they live? Well, all echinoderms, which are this group of organisms that include starfish and sea urchins and sea lilies and crinoids, live in the ocean. Okay, so they've never made it onto land. They've never made it into fresh water. You're not going to see them around here in Georgia. They live in the ocean. Why is this? Well, if you take a starfish and turn it over, it's got all these tiny little tentacly structures there. In essence, how they move around with those little tentacly structures is they fill them with seawater. So it's like moving around with all of these tiny little water balloons that it's squeezing to extend and move in different directions. So they need to be in ocean water or that system doesn't work. So where do crinoids themselves live? Well, it depends on the type of crinoid because they live in the ocean. They live in lots of places in the ocean. Crinoids like this here that have a stalk that connects it to the seafloor are found in really deep water. So this one here, if I look at the bottom here, was found in the Gulf of Mexico at 600 meters depth. So that is roughly 6 football fields down underneath the ocean itself. So super dark. There's no light coming down there. It's very deep. It's far away from where you could swim down by any means. There's also crinoids. Oh, and I should mention, notice white color. It's because pigments don't matter because everything's dark there. There's also crinoids that lose the stem and then have the ability to start swimming around and being more mobile. Those we can see in very shallow water. So they live in coral reefs, And if you watch a nature video with pictures from a coral reef or video from a coral reef, you've probably seen a crinoid before. They're there kind of sticking arms out, filtering the seawater, and living amongst the corals, brightly colored because, well, there's light there because it's shallow water. And finally, what is the head called? The head is actually an interesting question here. So let's talk about this in two different ways. First, here we can have a crinoid. This one is ancient. This one here is from 350 million years ago. This is an ancient crinoid itself, so a fossil crinoid. Now this one here, we can see this big body here. It's got big plates there. You can see another one right here. There we go, another crinoid head, which in this case is called a calyx. Now that's just essentially what we call the body region itself, where it's holding its guts, its stomach, all of that material is going into this area here called the calyx. Now, why don't we call it a head? Because crinoids don't have heads, like the way we think of heads. So what do we mean by a head? We mean this region of our body, which has our brain to think about things, that has our ways of sensing the world, so it has our eyes and ears and nose and mouth. Crinoids don't have that. They don't have eyes. They don't have ears. They can't pick up sound. They are essentially feeling their way around in the world, and they don't have a centralized brain. So in essence, they have just a round nerve, just like your spinal cord, that goes around that helps them detect the world and send signals through their own bodies. So in this case, they're not really a headed animal. They don't have a front and a back end. So they're really a very different type of organism than I am or you are. So calyx is what we call that, but it's really not the same thing as your own head. It's like the body itself. It's like your chest as opposed to your brain and your head and your eyes. Okay, so I hope I answered your questions. And thanks for your interest in fossils and in crinoids, which are the best animals ever in existence. All right, have a good day.